Hello, my name is Thania Petersen and I am an artist from Cape Town, South Africa.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And could you tell us about what brings you come here in Makassar and about your project with Stefani?
So I came to Makassar. I mean, it's been a longing my whole life to come to Indonesia. Our ancestors were from Indonesia. We are a community in Cape Town and we are called the Cape Malays. I say inverted commas because the name is a little bit political at the moment. But we come from a community which our ancestors were brought by the Dutch from Indonesia to Cape Town. And all my work in Cape Town, a very big part of my work is to unearth the histories and connections between Indonesia and Cape Town, between Africa and Asia, and also about the Indian Ocean. Because I think there's a lot of focus in the world and talk around the Atlantic Ocean, but there's not much that people know in South Africa or anywhere that I have been where people really talk about the Indian Ocean, with the history of the Indian Ocean. And we are connected through this ocean, you know, the whole Asia and Africa. Indonesia and Africa is connected through this Indian Ocean. And I think my work is about trying to retrace our histories, pre-colonial histories, because I believe that we were always connected in some way. So as a descendant of people who were brought from Indonesia, this trip for me was incredibly important, you know. We're not taught in school about our Indonesian ancestry. We're not taught about the men and the women and the children that were brought. We don't know many of them by name. There's maybe a few of them. And Makassar, I think, is particularly important because of Sheikh Yusuf of Makassar. He has a tomb in Cape Town, a kramat in Cape Town, as well as in Makassar. I mean, he's from Makassar. And he was a very important part of the politics of South Africa. And so the Indonesian ancestors and our ancestors from the Indian Ocean helped build Cape Town. You know, these people, our people, collectively together, our people who were brought to Cape Town has helped contribute towards the making of an entire society in South Africa. They have contributed to the culture, they have contributed to the music, they have contributed to the sound, the art. In every single way, they are part of the building blocks of what South Africa is today. But there is not much acknowledgement for this. So my work is about trying to demand acknowledgement for the people and honor the people that had traveled through the Indian Ocean and have contributed towards building South Africa.
Wow.
And I think there's a very beautiful story between Africa as a continent and Asia as a place that we don't know enough about. And so I think that what I'm trying to achieve is a different way of thinking about myself and thinking about my community, and not in the sense that everything started with colonization, because in Cape Town our history as people is taught from 1652, when the Dutch arrived, when the Dutch brought us, and we don't know much about who we were or what we belonged to before 1652. And so by reaching out back to Indonesia, it's a calling. You know, it's a calling, we are calling, you know, to, it's not called a call and response, but the act of it is a call and response. So what I started looking into as a way to liberate us from colonial histories and colonial narratives, I was trying to connect us as a community with a history that is not dominated by violence, but dominated through love. The history is taught through love. And I found that within the zikir, I could hear this. And so within the zikir, as you pronounce it here, within the zikir, I can hear a connection. I can hear a connection to so many places across this Indian Ocean that was brought to South Africa, brought to Cape Town, I will say Cape Town, brought to Cape Town by the Indonesians that were brought here. And so this, I believe, is a connecting force, and I believe that this sound, this music, holds our memory. And so when you can decode these sounds, you can hear time, you can hear place, you can hear people from a different land. And these people, once upon a time, sang together. You know, there was a time that we connected. Otherwise, how would we know each other's songs? How would we know each other's melodies? How would these melodies have transferred from one continent to the other? Only through the connection of love, and the connection of love for the divine. And so the literal meaning of zikir is to remember. And so I thought that perhaps a way to remember who we are as people who have maybe in a sense was forced to forget who we are. The way to remember is through the remembrance of God, we will remember ourselves. Through divine remembrance, we will reconnect to ourselves. And through the remembrance and through the practice of the dhikr, which is to remember God, we reconnect to all these lands that take us far. It takes us wide. It takes us to histories that's not dominated by colonization. It takes us to histories that's filled with stories of the multitude of who we are as people, you know, because we are so complex and complicated. But there was a time that we knew each other. Our ancestors had traveled, our ancestors had met, and our ancestors had shared. And so I created a calling. I worked with a dhikr jama in Cape Town, a dhikr group in Cape Town, and we created a calling. I asked them to mimic the calling of the adhan, but not to create the adhan, but the sounds of the adhan, almost as the melody of the adhan, so that it kind of sounded like a city or like any space where there's people. There's always the adhan. You can go to so many cities in the world and you will hear 5 times a day this calling, and it comes from all directions, from everywhere, in all different tones, in all different voices. The melody always remains the same. And so I wanted them to recreate a calling, but I was not sure who was going to respond. And this is what is so unbelievably magical, is that when we created this, we did not know who was going to respond to this. And Aristofani contacted me. I never met him, I didn't know him, I didn't know anything about Aristofani, and he had contacted me, and we had began a conversation. And to me, it was almost as if he heard us calling. And I know it sounds crazy, but this is how it unfolded. You know, it was a literal calling, and we created this. And Aristofani, he responded.
Yes, he responded.
And they came to Cape Town. Aristofani and the musicians then came to Cape Town. He came to Cape Town, and we began a conversation, and we got to know each other, and the musicians that he works with, who are all amazing and beautiful, and his wife Helza, and we just grew, you know, we just grew, a relationship grew, and then now I am here, and he's going to respond now to the calling which we created. And so it's something that has really just happened very organically, with no end result. You know, there's no end result. It's something that is just becoming something on its own. I think it's much bigger than me or Aristofani or anybody. It's just something that's developing into a connection. And I think it's about restoring, you know, it's about restoration. And for me, because of where I come from, it's a story of survival. And it's a story of overcoming, because the Indonesians who were brought to South Africa suffered an incredible amount of violence, an incredible amount of pain for 400 years, relentlessly, through colonization, through apartheid. The Indonesian community, who is no longer Indonesian, we're not a diaspora, you know, I also want to understand that. I don't think we are, and I tell you why. Our ancestors are Indonesian, but we are a very mixed community and a very complex community, and not everyone within our community has ancestry to Indonesia. Some to Tanzania, some to Madagascar, some to India. It's a very big and mixed community, and in order for me to keep saying Indonesian, it will exclude some people within the community. So I don't refer to us as a diaspora, but I do say and acknowledge and honor that a lot of us have come from Indonesian or of Indonesian descent. But that is what I'm here to honor. I'm here to honor this descent. I'm here to honor and reconnect, and I'm here to restore, and I'm also here to actually say we survived. Yes. They try so hard to kill us, but it didn't work. and we cannot dismiss that our spirituality is what has given us the strength.
Yeah.
And that I believe you can hear within our zikir.
Like that.
With Aristofani?
Yes, Aristofani and their group that play the play.
Yes, yeah. I think I'm extremely excited about this performance because it's manifested by itself, you know, yeah. And I think that the response is going to be a genuine response. You know, this is a real response. You know, yes. It was a real call, and this is a real response. Yeah. And the way it has happened has just been somewhat magical. I am very I'm very happy that it is Makassar, because we have a spiritual connection to Makassar and a historic connection to Makassar. I'm very grateful that the musicians come from all over, not only from Makassar, yes. But they come from various islands, but we're performing it in Makassar. I think that for me is also quite symbolic. And I feel very connected to Aristofani and the musicians and Helza, and I think I am grateful for this opportunity.
Okay, yeah. You mentioned about the symbolic that I heard that you will write it by yourself. This symbolic that will shown on the performance. Can you tell us about the symbolic? What makes you interest?
So
symbolic.
Okay, this is Aristofani's department.
Oh, this is the item.
This is the Aristofani, you know, and the musicians. I mean, they possess such an incredible knowledge that's, you know, indigenous and ancient, I think, to this place. And this contribution to the performance is something that I don't know anything about. But I think what is very beautiful is the fact that I am relearning this, because it's a knowledge that my ancestors would have known, but it was taken away from us. So for me, it's very important that I am having this opportunity to learn about this side, but I can't speak about it too much because I'm only learning. Yeah. You know, they are the experts.
Yeah. Okay.
I love being at the Makassar Biennale. I feel very special. It feels very special. It's, you know, it's more than just a Biennale for me. It's a very, very touching reconnection for me with the space, and this event has been so beautiful, and I feel like it's a real heart space, you know, this Makassar Biennale. It's such a wonderful place and event that has really allowed me to connect with the arts and the culture, not only of Makassar, but also now from the other artists that I've been meeting from other places. So I think that this Biennale has been an incredible opportunity for me, and I'm very grateful.
Yeah.
Sheikh Yusuf came I think Sheikh Yusuf was one of the very first Twangs who had been brought to South Africa and to Cape Town, and he was banished to quite a very far place outside of Cape Town. And at the time I can imagine it was even further, because now we can drive there, but then, I mean, it was very isolated. And Sheikh Yusuf was one of the Twangs who had brought Islam to Cape Town, and this, we cannot deny, has had an incredible impact on the culture and on South Africa as a whole. So I think Sheikh Yusuf came very early, and many Twangs had then come after him who have also contributed to the building. But I think that Sheikh Yusuf was one of the Twangs who had laid foundations of Islam in South Africa and in Cape Town. Yeah, and a major figure, a major and important figure and symbol of Islam in Cape Town. Yeah. Well, say, because I don't know if you wanted me to only speak about Makassar or... Oh, okay, sorry. Okay. So Islam, you see, we undeniably, Islam had come to the Cape, and the reason why it was so powerful is because it was an anti-colonial movement. It was, besides the indigenous people, you know, who at the time in South Africa was almost impossible to enslave, because they understood the landscape, they could outwit the colonizer. But with the people who were displaced and brought from the Indian Ocean to Cape Town, and specifically talking about the Indonesians, what these Twangs had brought was Islam. And Islam, to the displaced communities and people, had represented an anti-colonial philosophy. It was a philosophy that spoke against colonization. It was a philosophy that spoke against racism, against you know, apartheid, and all the things that colonialism promoted and tried to instill. And so by default, Islam as a movement had become a massive threat to the colonial government and colonial forces in South Africa. And so we cannot deny what the Indonesians had brought to Cape Town was a movement that was very much anti-colonial. And many people had gravitated towards this community, hence why we are so mixed as well. And many people had gravitated towards this community because of the brotherhood and this philosophy that had spoken, you know, what it represented by nature is anti-colonial. And therefore people had very much gravitated towards this community, and the community grew. And Tuan Guru from Tidore, he opened up the very first mosque and the very first madrasa in South Africa, in Cape Town, in the city, which is still there today. And through this institution, people were, you know, were united, and a community had formed. And so we can very much say that this was the absolute foundation of Islam in Cape Town.
Okay. Yeah. So I really want you work. This is for the artistic side. I want to know more about why you are working with so many mediums. Like I saw you doing photography,
yes,
a battery,
yeah,
and now you're doing performance. How you work with that kind of mediums?
So I guess I'm what you would describe as multidisciplinary. So I work across all disciplines, everything. I make film, I do sound, I do photography, I get embroidery, textiles, installation. I don't limit myself to anything. I think in South Africa, artists tend to work in a multidisciplinary way. I think we're very anti-boxes because we were boxed for so long, you know. The term apartheid is to keep people apart. And in the same way, apartheid and colonial systems keep you apart in everything. They keep everything. In the university, everything's apart. Subjects is apart. They box everything. And I think artists in South Africa generally, and more, I think, are multidisciplinary in nature. We work across most mediums. You know, it's just something that opens up the world in a different way. So anything and everything we can lay our hands on.
Do you want to tell us about how you involved in this art scene?
So I never wanted to be anything else but an artist. I was born and that was it. I think there was a time for 5 days in my life where I watched a series about a lawyer and I thought I'm going to become a lawyer. It lasted about 5 days in my whole life. But I've never ever thought, I don't think people become artists. I think you're just born an artist, isn't it? I don't think you can become an artist. I don't think it's a job. I think it's who you are. It defines every aspect of how you function as a human being. So I don't think you have a choice. I don't think there's a choice in the matter. I think you just are. So, so I didn't decide. I had no choice in this. Maybe I would have chosen something else if I had a choice.
Art is choice.